before things happen, did you like about the team and that kind of team can maybe they just want to be more efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what gives me so much optimism about next year is that there was so much good to start the year, starting 8-2, and we're clicking on all cylinders. I think everyone was rolling. Obviously, the way we were throwing it, the way we were running it, the way we were playing on defense. I think when you look back, I think the biggest thing too is it's always one of those things. The keys to victory, right? Win the turnover battle. I think we got to do a better job of that, taking care of the football. Next year is going to be huge for us. I think, we did a good job of taking the ball away. But if we can do that even more so this year, I think that'll be huge for our success.
With Daniel coming back from the Achilles, are you comfortable with the offense you can run, which, let's say his mobility isn't quite what it's offense here?
Yeah, I do feel confident. Obviously, he's attacking his rehab the right way, and so feel confident that he'll be ready to go for training camp. That's a great question. Obviously, we're diving into our self-scout stuff right now. I think, at the end of the day, it's about, starting with us as coaches, obviously looking at our scheme, trying to, scheme up those runs. You can get 2-3 yards, but, when your yards per carry go up is when you create those explosive runs. And we got to get back to that, creating those holes like we did earlier in the season for JT. So that'll be a big part of our study this offseason to maintain that. Yeah, I'm very excited about both those guys. They were having tremendous training camps. Obviously, unfortunate, circumstances with the injuries there. But Walley, he's a guy that can play inside, play outside for us. Feisty, sticky in coverage. And then same thing, Hunter on the back end playing safety. The ball just found him in training camp. He had a great sense, a great feel, obviously, playing the coverage that we were playing. But he was always in the right spot at the right time. He had a hell of a camp. I remember we had the joint practice against Baltimore, and he had 2 interceptions in a 2-minute drill. And so that was exciting to see and how he played those things. So, to get those guys back, get them healthy, it'll be huge for us.
Wohler's injury, kind of a longer injury. It seemed like he was all year. Do you expect him back for OTAs, training camp?
Yeah, I think so. OTAs started to work him in there, and then training camp as well. He's attacked the rehab the right way. Both him, Hunter, and Walley have been doing a hell of a job. They've been in there all year working. Even after the season ended, they're still in there every day working, getting their bodies right. I'm so excited, for what the future holds for those two.
We've got more from Shane Steichen in just a second, but we are at the Combine bringing you great content right now. So hit that sub button. You'll get free videos, not just from the Combine, but all off-season long. Free daily videos, free agency, draft, trades, and more. And while you're doing so, we want to hear from you. Comment on the videos. Share the videos. Let us know what you think about what's happening with the Indianapolis Colts. Be sure to hit that sub button.
You talked a lot about early season success on the offensive side of the ball, but what areas really stand out to you as parts of the offense that really need to improve this offseason?
I think it's really just the consistency throughout the year. I mean, if we can do what we did to start the season throughout a 17-game stretch, it could obviously be a really special season. And we know, obviously it's each week in this league, you're not going to have some of those games where you go for 450 yards and score 35 points, and it's finding ways to win the games regardless of what it looks like on a day-to-day basis out there and adjusting on the fly when we're out there. But obviously just the consistency which we play with that we did in the start of the season to, finish out the right way.
We've got Marion Hobby back with him now.
Yeah.
What are your expectations for what we might see differently on the line?
Yeah, I'm excited about Marion Hobby. He's got over 30 years of coaching experience, playing the league. Obviously familiar with Lou's system, coached with Lou there for 3 years in Cincinnati. I'm excited about the demeanor he's going to bring to that room, what he's about. Just going through the vetting process, calling people that have worked with him, just nothing but great things to say about the person, the human, and the coach he is. So I'm excited for him to, elevate that room.
Let's kind of follow up on Dustin's question. What can you do as leader of this organization to keep that continuity going when you have the season that you did at the first versus the last?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in this league too is when you do have some adversity there. I think it's just with everything, anyone in any organization, life, whatever. It's keeping a belief that no matter what the circumstances are, you're going to fight through and finish it. And I think that's the biggest thing because we're going to have adversity every year. You're going to get adversity through injuries or whatever it may be, or something happens that you got to find ways to overcome it. And so obviously you do a deep dive in that stuff, and things are going to come up next year that probably didn't come up last year that you got to get through and fight through.
Shane, what's the biggest thing for the first time coordinator play calling at least?
That's a good question. I think it's learning your guys. I think when you're a first-time coordinator calling it, if you go into a new situation, it's really learning your personnel. I think is a big part of it and how you want to use those guys. And then, you know, from a down and distance point, how you're setting up plays, marrying plays, play action, when to call certain things. Some of the guys here have heard me about it. I think, you know, there's an element and there's a feel to calling plays as well. You know what I mean? I think you have your list of plays, you have your third downs, you have your red zone section, and sometimes you might be like, hey, I'm going to call this here my first time I get in the red zone, but all of a sudden they change personnel on defense, and it's like, well, I'm not going to call that play here. So you got to be able to adjust on the fly, think fast. I think is a big part of it. Once you get in the flow of it and you start to feel it, obviously, you know, if guys are good at it and you got good personnel around you, you know, it could be really good.
Along those same lines, so there's a lot of coaches that went from being coordinators to first-time head coaches this year, something that you went through. How tough is that transition in the process to do that?
Oh, I think part of it is when you make that transition, there's a lot more than just putting together an offense. Obviously, you got to put together a whole staff. You got to meet everybody in the building. There's a lot of operation stuff that goes on. I think you got to manage all that from making that jump. And then once you make that jump and you get into your, you know, you get comfortable with that situation and how the operation's flowing, then you can dive into the football stuff. But you can't ever lose sight of that stuff because that's a big part of, you know, your job as a head coach to oversee it all. So I think that's the biggest transition for those guys.
Do you remember any maybe good advice you got about doing that?
Well, yeah, they say, hey, you're going to have a lot on your plate when you get hired, but just don't worry, it's all going to get done. It's all going to get done. So I do remember those nights when I first got hired. I didn't leave the office for probably 2 weeks. You know, you're on the phone making phone calls, trying to get coaches hired, trying to interview, flying guys in and out. My assistant's doing everything he can to get flights in and out for coaches, and interviews are lasting 8 hours, and you're bringing in the next guy, and then you're going, you got the food? Yeah, come on. And it's just nonstop. So that's part of, you know, that's all part of it.
What you think about
Alec's game? Obviously, career year last year with as a coach.
Well, I think he's made huge strides in his game. You know, obviously he's a big home run threat for us, as we know. But the intermediate stuff, the way he's coming in and out of breaks at the top of routes, the comebacks, the one-on-ones on the outside, you know, running in breaking stuff. I mean, he's made a lot of strides in all those areas. And even the 50-50 balls down the field, I mean, he's making those, you know, 70% of the time now. You know, you throw it up and you got a chance to go make a play for it. So it's been awesome to see.
Is his ability to do that accentuated his ability then to go down and make those plays on deep balls like if teams can't just sit on?
Yeah, I think so. I think he just has a natural feel to it, tracking the ball. I think that's a gift that he has. I think he was naturally born with tracking the football down the field. And obviously, if you put it in his vicinity, he's able to rotate his body certain ways, make plays, you know, at the top, you know, and go make those plays.
Both your coordinators this offseason interviewed for jobs elsewhere, whether that was Lou for a head coaching position or Jim Bob for OC play calling spots. Like, how much is it going to have both of those guys back in the fold heading into 2026?
Yeah, it's huge. Obviously, you want continuity on your staff, but at the same time, I always want those guys to progress. You know what I mean? Obviously, you always want guys on your staff. That's why you hire guys. You want them to get their opportunity to go be head coaches and do those things. But to have them back, it is, you know, a blessing to have those guys back.
All right, thanks, guys.